So it's great to meet you. I want to begin our conversation, I guess, kind of in this way of regenerative things. How did you survive the last 3.5 years living through a pandemic, and how has it changed you?
Wow, that's a really good question because I actually thrived in the pandemic,
Okay.
which I think is interesting because not a lot of people thrived in it. I found that I was so busy in my life and I was so consumed with doing and doing and doing that the opportunity for it to slow down allowed me to really come into my spiritual center and deepen my spiritual life, which is part of my soul recovery, what I call soul recovery, and to really find inner peace with myself and reconnect with my husband, who I had had a difficult marriage with for a long time. So for me, it really ended up being a place where I could turn within. I think the pandemic brought a what's the word I'm looking for? Brought a microscope to
Absolutely.
what was in our lives. And so if there was a lot of unhealthy thoughts and unhealthy being, it's like you were stuck with that. And in my situation, I was moving out of that and into a healthier way of being. And it really gave me space to be able to thrive.
It almost reminds me of when you go get your cleaning, you get your teeth done. It's like if you kind of step back, you're like, oh, those teeth look great. But when you come in, there's the plaque and all the little things that you got to kind of nudge out and say, I don't want that. I don't need this stuff. I need to cut this out and then make it clean again, make it good, make it whole.
Yeah,
So, uh,
exactly.
so you have a very interesting path in life, and I want to know first and foremost before we kind of delve into your, the onion layer, so to speak.
Mhm.
If you were in front of a bunch of third grade students right now and it was career day, and one of the kids curiously looked up and said, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
That's a really good question. For me, what I would say I do for a living is I help people remember their whole.
Okay. So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
Looking back, I wanted to be a therapist, which is funny because now that's what I am. I'm a spiritual coach. So recently, I really realized that when I was younger, I wanted to help people. And even in elementary school, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist and went to school for it and didn't end up doing that. But that's what I've done.
So, let's go back to where you were born and raised. And what were these seeds that were put into you that have grown into you wanting to help people and therapy and being a coach? How did that happen?
I appreciate that because I think the interesting thing is that from my childhood, I was raised in a hippie background. My middle name is Little Flower from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Won't even go into some of the funny stories, but my parents were definitely hippies. My dad still is, and raised Tibetan Buddhist. My mom found Buddhism the year that I was born, so in 1970. And there was this element of kind of altruism and being around other people and seeing the love of other people. But for me, what I was also learning was to be a people pleaser and a fixer. And so I got a lot of reward for being a fixer and a helper. And that really felt good to me. And so I think that when I was younger and I was looking at what I wanted to do, what I wanted to do was fix and help people. And now through the spiritual journey, what I realize is that no one can fix or help us. We can only remember our wholeness within ourselves, and that the world is never going to give us what we think that we want. So, what I thought that I was going to do of telling people what to do and how to make their lives better in elementary school, being the person that people came to with what was going on with them, is not at all what has ended up happening. But I can see the morphing of all of it from our ego, how we relate in the world to our humanness, into this place of moving more into being a human being who's open in a new way to spirituality.
And that's I think that's the kind of the path of wisdom, because the male psyche cardinal sin is to try to fix things, and we can't. It's not going to work. So you almost need to allow a platform to get it out, so that all of those particles can float up, and the real Tetris match can begin to kind of lay in, because it's all about us taking that reign and like pulling in our ego, superego, and id and making it whole. And we have to do that. It has to be our choice. It's like anything. It's like if you want to lose weight or you want to stop smoking or you want to get healthier, it's like all of those things can be told and compounded, but until you decide that's the moment, I'm sure a lot like with spirituality, it isn't going to go anywhere until you're serious about it.
Yeah, I was really thinking about this morning. For some reason I was contemplating how I feel so much peaceful now, more peaceful now, and what is that, and why do I feel that way? And I could just feel that part of me that used to want the world to be different. I wanted my husband to be different. I wanted our family dynamics to be different. I wanted my life to be different. And there was a lot of pain in that. But I spent a lot of time pointing the finger and blaming and going to counseling and spending the whole time just complaining about my husband, really. And then when I started doing this work and when the pandemic came, and so it's interesting to start with the pandemic, and I started diving deeply into the spiritual journey, what I realized is it's nothing on the outside, it's all on the inside. It's how I choose to see it, it's how I choose to interact with it, and how I choose to be attentive to my own inner experiences and begin to do the ego, the superego, and the id. Also, in eternal family systems, which is something that I really love, like looking at our variety of parts that are within us and how we protect ourselves. And through that, everything started to integrate, and I could see the world in a different way, and I could feel the feelings that I had been afraid to feel.
Yeah. So who's been a hero for you in your life?
Mm, that's a really good question. I think that's a good question because I was really taught to be such an individual and
Mhm.
to not rely on anybody. That part of my journey is to get off my self-righteous high horse and thinking that I knew everything. The more I do this, I know nothing. So I would say that really my heroes are people who have really released, like Ram Dass or the Dalai Lama or Eckhart Tolle or Pema Chotrin or Wayne Dyer, people who really did this inner work and have been able to share with the world these experiences from a very humble, awakened state of still staying human and accessible, but showing a way to be in the world in a new way.
So you named some powerful people there. If you could meet anybody on the planet right now that would be an inspiration that you would love to talk to and be around, who would it be? Who would that one person be?
Probably the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So in the annals of spirituality and theology, if you could go back in time and witness one thing take place, an event, what event would you love to see with your own eyes?
Mm, that's a really good question. I think that I would really like to have been around Jesus. Actually, it's interesting that I'm going to say that in his actual time, because I think that part of my story is that I was raised Buddhist, but then I had a grandmother who was Christian and scared me in Christianity and said I was going to go to hell and really turned me off to Christianity. And this spiritual journey that I've been on is around us looking at whatever spirituality is for you, that it's not any dogma of any particular person. And so I think that the more that I've studied becoming a metaphysical minister, the more I've actually studied the life of Jesus from a mystical standpoint, I would really love to witness what that was like, not through the eyes of history, but through the eyes of the experience.
I was on the other end of that. I grew up um, in the Christian Midwestern kind of mindset. And when I went to California for the first time, in my personal age of awakening in my 20s, there was a book of Buddha in the bedside table. And that felt really comforting to me from where I came from. It resonated in a way that was very human, very grounded, very logical, no fire and brimstone, no sulfur coming out of the pages. It just was very like a stream going through a forest or a leaf falling slowly into a stream. There was something that made sense because nature made sense. the idea of hell and all of this damnation didn't, or this notion of a place called heaven that no one has ever experienced other than through the pages of a book that's been handed down for so long. So anyway, I was kind of the flip side of that, found a lot of comfort in that book, you know.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's an example of there's many paths to the top of the mountain, right? The top of the mountain is to feel love and oneness and serenity and wholeness, and to leave behind sort of the shackles of humanness. And whether it's through Buddhism or Christianity or no religion at all, or just your own spiritual journey, the more we can accept each person's path up the mountain and stop thinking that there's only one path, the more that we can really open up to speaking to each other and connecting with each other in ways that I think would be really powerful. There's so much fighting and dogma over what? Over love, you know?
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I think that's the thing that's therapeutic about podcasting is that these stories get to be shared in a very communal environment that's very positive. But all of these theologies share the same notion. I mean, there's a central figure, love is the tenant, and then all of these things that kind of come out of it, whether it's Hinduism or it's Christianity or Buddhism or whatever it is, it's just a part of all of them. And
Mhm.
humans have a weird way of just throwing a huge rock in that peaceful river and just making it murky and weird. So I don't know. We have a lot of figuring out to do, but there's a lot of people that do have it figured out, like the Dalai Lama and people like that. So,
Mhm.
um, so as somebody that is leading people to figure it out, every day you wake up, what is your motivation? What is it that makes you want to help people and to ultimately be who you are?
I used to think, based on our little bit of our conversation before, that it was about fixing and helping others. I really was so consumed with trying to make my family better that I actually made it not as healthy by my super helicopter, super controlling, super um, involved in every single thing in everybody's lives. And so now my tenet is to be as connected with myself and my spiritual journey, and to not think that I'm nudging my husband in church saying, oh, this is for you to get, I hope you get this one. It's really, if I hear something or feel something, it's for me. It's for me to expand. It's for me to be part of the whole. It's for me to, not from the selfish perspective that says I'm better than, but if I can truly feel ease and contentment and peace and release the pain of the past in my own heart and understand the concepts, then I have something to give. But it isn't because I know better, it's because I've experienced it. It's, having been a recovered alcoholic, you can't go talk to somebody who's an addict and give them a belief that there's another solution if you haven't been there.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think for me, with the community that I lead, we are predominantly codependents or have other addicts in our lives because that's the life that I had. I can't speak to a life that I didn't have. So my core purpose in every day is to live as truly from my higher power and my higher self that I can, and not to be better than anybody else, but to be one with everyone else. And from that, then I can give from a healthy place instead of a I think better than you place, which I think can be really dangerous.
yeah. So what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
I think the best advice I ever gotten was to look at your own part.
Yeah. What's been your favorite success story and all of the people that you've helped? What's been one of your favorite ones that always puts a smile on your face?
I have so many. I am so honored and blessed to be doing this work. So when I work with somebody who in our first meeting I relate to, and I remember the part of myself that felt this way too, that really just felt like they didn't have any control of their life, or that their spouse was the fault, and that they were out of sync with who they are. And by the time we work on the soul recovery process and it doesn't take that long because it's just like you said earlier. It's like once you make the decision to make a decision that you want to be healthy, you're already on the track. And it's just somebody facilitating it for you so that you have a light shined for you to do it for yourself. And when they come and they've let go of all of that, and they are really turned within, and the same chaos is happening in their house that was happening before, but it doesn't affect them in the same way, my heart just fills. And it's not me, it's really them doing the work. I'm just a witness to it.
So, in our lives, in our spiritual walk, there's all of these moments where you can say, I believe that there's a God, whatever God we subscribe to. There was moments of clarity. I know I've had it. Have you had something like that?
Absolutely. And I think that the more that I tune into it, the more it's nuanced and subtle, but I feel it in everything. My father was just diagnosed with cancer. And you just look at, there's some people that believe that, like, you bring to yourself he deserved cancer, or that he lived a life where he's being punished for it. And I don't subscribe to any of that stuff.
Yeah.
What I really think is that when we're in the flow, when you're allowing what is, when you're accepting the complexity of humanness, and then you open to the belief that you are being cared for regardless of what's happening, you start looking, instead of looking at, oh, this went wrong, or he didn't go to the doctor, or he didn't do this, or it should be like this, and you start looking at what's working. And I can only see what's beautiful,
Yeah.
and the timing of things, and the resources that are being provided for him, and my timing of my work schedule to be able to go be with him and help him. And and this knowing that even if it doesn't turn out in this way that I think we get attached to how it turns out, that it is ultimately in the flow, and that I can trust the process, and it's already brought us closer together. And that's a gift too, right? So it's about seeing how things are working and moving in that direction. And to me, that's seeing spirit in everything.
So in this journey of our lives, there's all these things that we overcome, things that make us better, wisdom we gain. What are you the proudest of? What have you done so far? What is the one thing that you're the proudest of that you've done in this life?
Mm, I'd say the proudest thing I've done in this life is to raise two beautiful boys, who are real human beings, who have issues and um, have addiction, and were raised in an alcoholic home, and that I was able to be present even in my dysfunction, and that I was never attached to them as being mine. That I really, one of my prides is that I provided a space for them to be their own human beings, and to discover who they are, and to love and accept them always for exactly who they are, even when it was really hard, and even today as young men when they make choices that sometimes feel hard, to just let them be human beings on their spiritual journey.
I think it's easy for us, and almost kind of a cushy way to say it's all about unconditional love. And you hear that growing up all the time. But as I've gotten older, I realize that's the bedrock of what we're doing with anybody. It really is about the unconditional love. You have to accept people and hold on to that. It's very important.
And accepting doesn't mean you have to like it.
Right. Right.
I think some people think accepting means you have to think it's all great. No, sometimes some of it's not all that great. But
Yeah.
the more I let go of control, or thinking that that I know better, that's one of those things, man. I thought I got so much reward as a kid for being a good problem solver, that I was determined to solve everybody's problems.
Yeah.
And then you look and you go, how do I possibly know?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
I possibly know what's right for you?
Yeah.
If I put the attention on myself, that's enough energy to heal myself. Like, I can't possibly heal you too.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Mm, I hope people see me the way that I see myself, which is really an unconditionally loving human being that really tries to walk in a way that sees people for their wholeness and has minimal judgment. I definitely still have judgment when if I'm honest in my humanness, but I catch myself more, and I hope that people see that I want the best for everyone, for whatever that is for them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that means that they're going to hit a wall, you know, sometimes it means they're going to go through the dark night of the soul.
So if anyone out there wants to hire you, reach out, learn more about you, anything about your world, what's the best way to do that?
The website's the best way, and recoveryoursoul.net. And then the podcast called Recover Your Soul is on YouTube, the website, and all streaming platforms.
Reverend Rachel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your story. This has been wonderful.
I so appreciate it, Joe. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you as well.
It's been great. And before you go, I just want to ask you, do you know who Randy Fiki is?
No.
Okay. Anyway, he's big in the Unity world here in Kansas City, and I got remarried in 2019, and he presided over it. So I,
Really? I'll have to look him up.
yeah, he's pretty prolific here in Kansas City. So yeah, I just thought it always seems like, he has multiple Facebook accounts because he has so many people that know him. So I figured, since you were familiar with the campus, I know he's big on it. So at any rate, so yeah, cool. Well, hey, thank you again, and best of luck with everything. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you. You too. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.